Well, howdy everybody. So we have got a interesting and strange opportunity here. VEVOR, as you know, sent me this is their 200 amp inverter 2025 model welder. They sent me that, had me do a review on it. Some of you probably saw that video. Well, they decided they want me to do a side-by-side comparison between that and their MIG 270, which is the, I believe, 2023 model. I find this really intriguing because I got on their website. When they ask me if I want to do a review, they'll send me a suggestion like, hey, you want to review this? And I generally get on their website and go check it out and decide, hey, is that something I'm interested in playing with? Because honestly, I want to make sure if I'm going to screw with it and put it on the YouTube channel, it's something you might be interested in that I can actually use, put to work. Like this little MIG 200, I have put quite a bit of time on, actually used it on several jobs since I did that review on it. Just I'd like to know, like, if it's going to blow up in 2 months, I'd like to tell you guys that. These two welders had such similar characteristics, but just strange differences that I had thought to myself, which one of these things would I buy? Because they still sell this one on their website right alongside that one. So I'm actually quite excited to get a chance to play with them both and give you guys some feedback on what's what. Now, so this one has the same process capabilities as that one. This one is MIG with gas, flux core, or lift arc TIG. But instead of all the fancy digital stuff, this one has a 3-position switch. MMA, which is stick welding, lift arc TIG, and MIG. Where it gets interesting is this one is a 270 amp welder. So it is definitely bigger. It's a little heavier, not a ton. But, you know, it's noticeably larger. So this 200, you are getting a more compact package by getting the model, or the 200 amper. So this MIG 270, rated input current. So this is interesting. They are saying if you're running stick, 30 amps is what this thing is going to suck on 220 volts. 25 amps running MIG. Current output range, 30 to 270. Open circuit voltage, 60 volts. That's pretty typical for like stick welder. And then it's once again set up for 0.8 or 1.0 millimeter, which is either 30 or 40 thousandths wire. Now that gets to the first thing I'm going to mention. It was a little different. This one came with 2 knurled rollers and a smooth roller. This one came with a smooth roller in it. That was it. So right out of the box, this one is set up for running solid wire with gas. If you're going to run flex wire, you're going to have to get a new drive roller. Now, I got on eBay and immediately, just with very little searching, I was finding these for like $6 a piece. So you can get them cheap enough. It's just weird the things that they decide to add or not add, right? Because this one, for whatever reason, came with 3 rollers. This one only comes with 1. I would personally think it'd be a little handier if they went ahead and gave you at least 1 of each so that straight out of the box you're ready to go. But if you're going to run flex cord wire, you need to get yourself a roller. They don't break this down nearly as much as they did on the other one. They just say rated duty cycle 30%. If this thing is 30% at 270 amps, which I think is what they must be saying, that is mind-blowing amounts of power for the size this thing is. For comparison, my Millermatic 250X that's sitting there, I believe is 60% duty cycle at 250 amps, and it is magnitudes larger. I mean, it's on wheels, it weighs, 250 pounds. So if this thing is getting a 30% duty cycle at 270 amps, they don't break it down, but I would say that that's got to be getting you at 100% duty cycle in the high hundreds, like 180 amps or something, which is crazy. I mean, just bonkers amounts of power for the size that it is. So let's go over the controls on this thing again. So you remember, this one is all automated, where you've got modes and ranges. This one is more of an old school welder, where you have 4 controls. You've got current, which that is only functioning in stick welding mode. And then you've got wire speed, which, obviously classic adjustment. And I think this one is tying wire speed and amperage together. I think what you're actually adjusting is maybe the amperage, and it floats the wire speed to match it. Not for sure on that. They don't clarify that. This one is more of a classic wire welder, where you got a voltage adjustment and a wire speed. Now what this has got, that one, if it's got it, it's doing automatically. This has a burn back adjustment. We'll have to play with that. I haven't run this thing at all. I literally haven't even plugged it in yet. Pretty pleased with the overall look of the thing. Let's go over what comes with it. So obviously your manual. They give you a hunk of hose to use with gas shielded MIG welding, but I'm going to say they do not give you a regulator, which not shocked at that. You have to have your own regulator. If you've got your own regulator, you've probably got a better hose than this one. So chuck that. They give you this. I believe they intend these for welding. Here's what you do with these. I'm going to show you a minute. Take them and pitch them. Those will wreck your eyeballs. Don't even think about welding with those on. Grinding, maybe, but that's it. So now that we've got rid of the stuff that is of absolutely no earthly use, I want to remind you, this thing is $200. If they want to give you junk that you don't use for $200, that's great, because what you are getting is a bargain again. So obviously you get a ground lead and a stick lead. So this is interesting. They've labeled the front of this for, because this is your lead for connecting up to doing wire welding. And they label the positive and the negative, but they don't just leave it at that. They label one gas and one no gas so that you can tell, because it's opposite polarity between gas shielded versus flux shielded. So anyway, we're going to set this thing up to run some more flux wire. This is your stick stinger. And once again, they're a little shorter than I really like, but I have to admit, it's such a light portable welder that you can get it close to where you're working. The only thing I don't like about that is then the welder itself is within range of the spatter and the spit. Now, I want to run flux core, so I needed a knurled roller, and seeing as they had sent me an extra knurled roller with this one, I just stole it and put it in there already. So we've already got knurled drive roller installed. And I want to set this one up to run 030 flux core. So they do, by the way, send it with another roll of 030 flux cord, which is interesting because this one came straight from the factory with a roll of 040 in it, or 1 millimeter. So intriguingly enough, they send this one, despite being a bigger welder, with a smaller roll of wire. But I bought myself an 11-pound spool because I tried mounting an 11-pound route. Here we've got, they give you a miscellaneous little bag of hose clamps and a hose adapter, because it's got an internal gas valve and then it's got a barb fitting on the back. They give you a double-ended barb fitting adapter to adapt to a different hose size if what you're using is different. Now, interestingly, this one does come with a TIG torch. They don't give you a tungsten, you got to buy your own, but it comes with a TIG torch. And I believe, yes, this is one of them that has the gas valve built right into the torch. You have to manually run your gas valve. But if you're wanting to be able to do some TIGging straight out of the box, this one is definitely intending that more that way. I mean, remember, this is like $25 cheaper than that one. If TIG is your goal, remember, it's just lift arc, so you don't have any high free, you don't have any AC, but if you just want to do some DC TIG welding, this is probably the one to go with. It does come with a torch. It also comes with what I'm about to hook up on it. Same gun that came on this other one. And it comes with a pair of, I hope, 0.8 diameter tips to go with that. But I have run that other one quite a bit. I really like these little torches. They work nice. I've been duly impressed with how well those have worked. Just handy, comfortable little size. So we're going to set this thing up with a roll of 0.03 wire and see what we can do with it. Funny, because I had been assuming that this was all set up for 0.04 because that's how that one came, and instead it already came set up. I figured I'd be switching tips and everything, but it literally comes straight out of the box ready to do what I want to do with it, which is set her up for some 0.03. So, all right, let me go get a roll of wire and we'll get her stuck on here. So it's time to plug this thing in for the first time and see what she does. So we can get some wire to feed through here. That's interesting. It lit up a lot faster than that one did. Let's see here. Oh, I put it in MIG mode. Well, that's slick. They've got a wire feed function right there. Very nice. It's a rapid feed. That is very nice of them. There, tip back on, snug her back up. Technically, you don't need this at all. That's one of the cool things about flux cord over gas shielded, is if you've got to get in some crazy tight spot, and I'm honestly thinking about doing something crazy, is just putting some heat shrink tube over this from here back so that it's insulated all but the very tip, and just running it completely without this, because man, you can get into some tight spots without that on there. But for now, we'll just run it conventionally. I have got her set. We're going to try, I took out the same old hunk of chimney pipe that I screwed with last time when I was running the 040. And we're going to try running this stuff now. I'm set at 14.4 volts and 148 inches per minute. I assume that's inches per minute, or we're going to find out. That's what I don't know. Play with this burn back. And we need a lot less firepower. Yeah, on this thin stuff, it looks to me like you want the burn back down at 1. Definitely much better suited to it than what that one was with that size wire. I'd say it's going to do what I want to do, which what I'm really after is I want to set this thing up for doing exhaust type work. So let's try grabbing the same plate we welded on last time and fire this up. So you can see this is all the welds that we ran with that one. We're going to flip this plate over and run some beads on the backside. We're going to kick our fan in a minute. I want to dial this thing up. We're going to give her 170 on wire speed, just see how that feels better. Not shabby at all. We'll play with the wire speed, dial it up a little more, see what that does. I'd like to point out that I'm doing this right now on 110 volts. Run a inside bead here. Really doing a nice job. That's why main reason that I dropped this one to the 030 wire, is I wanted to see, like, could I do a good job. I wanted to be able to just plug into a 110 volt plug and go to town and go to welding. This one is definitely more user friendly, right? Like, real quick, plug it in, you know, remind you guys of the interface. So this one has definitely got, you know, like right now, way more bells and whistles. And if you're just wanting to haul off and go welding, especially on wire modes, this one is pretty impressive because it's got, you know, you bump it around, all your modes are automatic. MIG manual, you go over to MIG synchronized mode, and you just start twisting this knob here, and it shows you how many amps you're going to be running, and it's tying your voltage, recommended voltage, and wire feed right to that, and you can just pull the trigger and go to work. And it does a fantastic job of that. Now, if what you're after is a little more horsepower, and you're wanting to be able to lay down some real firepower, this is admittedly more amperage, doesn't have as many bells and whistles. So, we are switched over to my leads. You just unplug the lead going to the MIG wire. What I'm going to try is some 3/32 6013. The reason I'm not diving right up to the 1/8 inch or even the 5/32 is because I don't have the right adapter combination right now to plug this thing. Think about that. Yeah, I need to do some adapting on this. At any rate, now we got to switch this thing over to what they call MMA, which is stick melt welding mode. Alright, we're going to set her to 80 amps, which ought to be rocking right along this. A little less than that. We'll set her, yeah, 69. It acts to me like it's not super accurate on the amperage it says it's giving you. Like that is super cold welding at 90 amps. And 90 amps ought to be melting this size rod right down. Welding nice. I would just say that the right there, we're welding pretty darn good at 107. We'll go up to 118. That's a lot of amps for this size rod. So this, it's interesting. It's claiming it'll let me have all 274 plugged into 110 volts. So this whole thing appears to not be as high-tech as that one. That one knows what voltage you've got it plugged into because it says it on the screen as soon as it lights up. And then it limits how many amps of output you can have based on which voltage you're plugging into. This one, we'll see what happens here in a minute. I'm sure I'm going to trip the breaker immediately, but it ought to just ignite this. Which it is. It's practically turning it into a cutting torch. All right, now we got to try something. The other one, as you may recall, was about maxed out on this 5/32. Now, there's absolutely no way that this thing ought to be even close to pushing out 270 amps on 110 volts input. So here's what I would expect. We tripped the breaker. The fact that we did not trip the breaker immediately, I would say this thing does not put out the 270 amps. Or, I mean, for sure not on 110 volt. I'm just a little baffled by the readout. I feel like we've got to get this thing plugged into 240 volt before we really can tell the tale, because it actually did a shockingly good job of running that 5/32 rod on 110 volt. Like, I'm not doubting that. I'm just questioning, like, why does it say that it's giving me 270 amps when I know darn well it isn't? Like, the fact that it let me weld as long as it did makes me suspect that it's probably limiting output. Just based on my experience with these other ones, I'm going to say 140 amps is max, but it's probably 120 amps or something is all you're getting out of it on 120, and that's what it feels like here. I can weld with this 5/32 rod, but I'm welding pretty cold. So anyway, I'll get this thing, we're going to figure out how to get this on 240 volt because we need to see what it really does. So it occurred to me that the adapter for the other one plugged into this adapter. So they went two different ways with these things, by the way. It's very interesting. I like what they did with this newer one much better. They just put 110 volt plug on it and then gave you an adapter over to 240 volt. This one comes with a 240 volt plug on it and then an adapter that took it from that to 110, and that is annoyingly irritating. I actually have that one plugged into it right now and I plugged into the adapter for that because I'd already adapted it over to be compatible with my style plugs. So I've got an adapter plugged into an adapter right now, but I'll have to do a little more modifying. But anyway, let's see what this does. We are in Chernobyl mode right now, and I want to see if it 270 amps ought to pretty light this stuff up. Definitely substantially more power. I can't tell you exactly if we're getting 270 amps. I kind of doubt that, but I can tell you that we're getting more amps than I ought to be running through that size rod. Like, it's too hot of an arc. So let's try backing her down and try it again. And that's too cold of an arc. So I think that's the thing that my takeaway from this is just use these amp numbers as a reference, because I don't think they're reading accurate amps. They made a lot of improvements. I guess that's what I would say. What I'm really taking away from all of this, the more I'm playing with it, is I would just say, so this one is less money. This is a much more sophisticated welder. They're not showing what its rated output is, but this one, they made a point of showing that when you were in stick mode, you didn't get full power out. And I'm just realizing that's what's probably going on here. Now, the booger of it is, because this one is more sophisticated, it tells you that. This one, it doesn't. Like, you toggle back and forth between these, and it just tells you it's giving you juice that it's not. So I don't think that it's doing less than it's advertised to. It's just poorly described. So what I would say is this thing is a comfortable 1/8 inch capacity welder. It really ain't rated for 5/32 rod. It'll run it, but that's not its happy spot. I'll go get us some 1/8 inch rod and we'll run a bit of that in a minute. What I am going to try here, figure out where to lay this. So this is, as I mentioned last time, some really junk imported 1/8 inch 7018. So don't use this rod as an example of anything, but we're going to see what happens if we twist her right to the top on some 1/8 inch. Back her down a bit, try another pass. Oh yeah, that's starting to look like it right there. So yeah, it's sweet spot. It's a nice 1/8 inch welder. That's what it boils down to. On 240 volt, like, it's laying down some gorgeous beads here. I'll show you what we got. I mean, look at that. So there's my first one. It's all smoky up. This was my with it pegged on 5/32 7014, which is a pretty respectable weld. I don't object to that. It's just this, you can dial it back a bit and it really lays a nice bead with 1/8 inch 7018. This was my 3/32 6013, and then this is wire welding, various settings, inside fillet. If you want to save a couple bucks, it's a fully capable welder. I would say that overall, despite it being advertised at more amperage, I think it's actually, the way it feels to me is like it's frankly pretty comparable to that one. I would think of it more, rather than as a bigger welder, you know, more power, as just a simpler, less expensive welder is how I would view this one. So that said, both very nice machines. I mean, 200 bucks, but what I would say is bang for the buck, this is hard to beat. For the other $25, that is a very fully featured welder. And after having run both of them, my personal preference is definitely the 2025 model. Do I like the 2023? Yep, it's a great machine. I will undoubtedly run it. I mean, what I've just set it up for, it's going to be fantastic. It's got an 11 pound roll of 030 in there, flux core, and that will do a fantastic job on exhaust work. I'm very excited to just have that thing around here running small, thin tube stuff. But if I wanted just one welder to rule them all after having played with them both more, I think I would buy that one. So, oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention while we were in here, I'll stick this back up here so I can talk. This was after I got that, this arrived. I got on eBay, and you just punch in, like it says right in the manual, what, yeah, these are, if you punch that in, that MB15AK, into a search on eBay, it brings up all kinds of cool stuff. Like I punched that in, you know, that MK or MB15AK consumables. I got this kit with, I don't remember, it's like 10 tips, 4 nozzles, 2 of the inner nozzle mounts, the insulators, the wrench. It's $13. So anyway, parts and pieces of these things are stupid cheap. And like I mentioned before, the drive rollers, I think those were like $6 a piece on there. So very cheap operating welders. So overall, my impression is fantastic machines. If you wanted my 2 cents, I would spend the extra 25 bucks and buy this MIG 200, the new model. It's definitely, you can tell they've just refined it a lot. But we'll put both of them to good use around here and keep you posted as we develop further opinions on them. So you guys have a good one, and we'll catch you next time.